right. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to this new episode of Inbound Unbound. I'm Michaela Phillips. I will be your host today. I am a senior strategist here at Protocol 80, and I'm here with our guest of honor. She is an absolute whiz on our RevOps team and our resident subject matter expert in the new and exciting solution that we'll be talking about today. The solution is called Superid, and it helps to make HubSpot implementation a lot easier. Among many, many other things that I'm sure Vicki will share. So before we get into it, Vicki, can you just please introduce yourself?
Yeah, you bet. Thanks for having me, Michaela. Like you said, my name is Vicki Sonne. I am a HubSpot solutions developer here on the P80 team. I work really closely with onboarding, client onboarding, and a little bit of RevOps as well with HubSpot. So yeah, have my hand in a few different things on the P80 team.
Awesome. All right. Well, let's start with the basics because I'm sure a lot of our listeners haven't heard of Superid. Again, apologies if I say it wrong. I was just telling Vicki before this. I've been calling it Superid. Superid is the proper way to say it. So if you hear me slip, no, you didn't, and we'll keep it rolling.
Forget about it.
But let's start with the basics. What is Superid, and how does it help integrate with HubSpot?
Yeah, so Superid is a platform that was created as a way to help improve process and platform adoption for any web-based application. So in our day-to-day use cases, we're usually talking about how do we better implement HubSpot? How do we get teams to use HubSpot? But the cool thing is that it's not necessarily built just to work with HubSpot. It can work with any platform that is a web-based program. So technically, that could be Salesforce, or maybe you have an ERP system, or Gmail, LinkedIn. Really, the sky is the limit. It's really unique that it can work across different URLs and platforms. As far as how it's implemented, it's actually run off of a Chrome extension that Superid calls the Sidekick. So once you have the extension downloaded into your internet browser, basically you have this little lightning bolt icon that shows up on the right side of your screen, and that gives you access to all of the various types of content or documentation that you have built out in your Superid account.
Awesome. Yeah, I love their theme, I guess I'll say, with just everything is superhero themed. So it will refer to you as, hey, superhero, your sidekick is your sidekick, the lightning bolt. It's just a fun way that they took it. And it's so different. But I like it. I like it a lot. So I know
you like pink because it's pink everywhere.
Yeah. Which makes it like girl superhero, which I love to see as well. So, so it's awesome. I know that you had touched on, we think of it a lot on the HubSpot implementation side, just because that's where we're in, that's what we do. And a lot of times that, we see the struggle. I see it with my clients. You probably see it even more with HubSpot onboardings that you're doing and just when you get pulled into these HubSpot accounts. So why do you think implementing new tools like CRMs or even enablement platforms are so challenging for any team really, but we work primarily in the B2B and the manufacturing space?
Yeah, I think you hit on it that any change or any big change can be really time consuming and overwhelming, but I think it's particularly hard with CRMs because that really is your core tool and where all of your information lives. Your data, your records, all of your activities, everything your team has done, potentially all of your reporting, really all of that information is in one place and also spread across all of your teams too. As far as why it's challenging, I think the platforms can look different. The data structures can be different. Data lives in different ways, maybe in HubSpot versus other platforms. So there's just a lot of complexity around making that change and understanding what may be different when you move to HubSpot or use HubSpot.
Definitely. And I know you touched on it too, but specifically when there's a ton of different teams all using the same platform, the same data, it's a lot of hands and can lead to a lot of confusion. So I know that one thing that you guys do a great job of is just making sure that things are simple, intuitive, as best as we can within the platform, making sure that it works for all of the teams involved. In your experience, what are the biggest barriers when introducing a new tool like HubSpot into traditional teams?
Yeah, I think one of the main items is probably understanding the data structure. So let's say that you're coming from Salesforce and you're moving to HubSpot, understanding the terminology differences. So what might be a Salesforce lead or contact is going to be a contact in HubSpot. The differences of accounts versus companies, things like that. Just really understanding what you have now, how it's structured, and having a clear understanding of what it's going to look like when you move into HubSpot so that everybody is aligned and understands what they're looking at. Probably the other thing would be just understanding all of the tools that you have available. Sometimes during onboarding, it's like so overwhelming that you have all of these things available to you, but you don't really know how to use them or why you should use them. So just understanding some of those core tools that can really help make your life easier, whether it's in your marketing team, sales team, or service team, understanding some of those basic tools and features that can streamline your workflow and help save you time in your day-to-day.
I think that's something that I've seen a lot is they get HubSpot as a new tool, and no matter what hub they have or who's primarily using it, it's like, this is such a huge investment and it's such a great investment and they're excited to start using it. But there's that decision paralysis of like, oh my gosh, where do I start?
What do I do?
Like, what do I do? Where do I click? Where do I go? What should I do? And I think that what you said there was really important, in that start with the tools that will help streamline things, start to buy the team more time, because then you can, once you have that foundation laid and a good, strong foundation, you can start to get into some of the other tools that are maybe they're more exciting or can have a more ongoing impact. I think that starting with the basics is where you need to go, because a strong foundation is so important. I'm sure you see it a lot, where people come in and maybe they've set some things up and everyone was kind of like all over the place and like wanting to do everything at once, but there's no synchronicity with what they were doing. So then you kind of have to untangle a lot of those webs. So I know that that's something that I'm sure you're nodding. You see a lot, because I see it from like further back. Like I see it and then I'm like, Vicki,
Help.
help.
Yeah, we definitely see that it's easy to get distracted by the bells and whistles, like all those really, really cool features. But at the end of the day, if you don't have a defined process and your team doesn't know what the process is, that makes it really hard to have a system that everybody uses consistently and in a similar way.
Absolutely. And I know we kind of touched on it here, but do you have any like specific stories or examples of a moment where you saw a client or internal team struggle adopting HubSpot before having tools like Superid, or pulling in the RevOps team or something like that?
Yeah, so recently, granted, Superid can help clients and agencies or internal teams, but recently we've been using Superid to help us establish a more standardized onboarding process. So like we've talked about, onboarding can be so complex and overwhelming, and you just sometimes don't know where to start. Sometimes we have a similar outlook on that, where every client is different, every process could be different. But what has really made a big difference for us internally is utilizing what they call the action plan in Superid to lay out the full process of what onboarding can look like. So with the action plans, you can have different phases, you can have different sections or tasks to do within each of those phases. And it's just a really cool way to give you that master roadmap of how you get from point A to point B over that certain timeline, to where you can see where you're going and how you're going to get there. It kind of takes that paralysis aspect out of it a little bit. Let's see, what else on that? Sometimes when we say, standardizing your process, people think, oh, I'm just going to get a cookie cutter experience. Everything is going to be the same. We're not going to deviate from what you have in the plan. But I don't think that's the case in this type of scenario, where the structure or the standard process is there to help us, and it's there to help the client to just understand what things should we be thinking about, What questions should we be asking to make sure that we have a good discovery conversation and understand all the things that we should know in order to implement a good solution for the client. So it's really not cookie cutter. It's really just meant to be a starting point. What questions should we ask and start with? And then we can always customize and make sure that we implement the right things based on those conversations.
Right. Those first conversations are so, so important in terms of where do we go? What do we do? Because everyone's goals are different. And so we need to start with those intro questions just to make sure that we're all pulling in the same direction, and getting things set up as close as they can be. So yeah, no, I agree. I love a process. I love the organization of a process. I think it cuts down on, if someone had one expectation, someone had a different one, like having that standard process keeps everything moving smoothly, keeps everything moving quicker. And then also it doesn't remove the capabilities for creativity or differences in the plan. It just gives it that foundation, because again, I said it before and I say it, it's wild how it kind of all circles back to everything we do. But even in Inbound, we talk about foundation is the most important part. If you don't have, and we talked about it with Kathleen last time, if we don't have a strong foundation, a good website, nothing's going to be as impactful as it could be. And the same can be said with the HubSpot implementation side of things too, I think.
Yeah, definitely. We've seen clients come up with some really cool ideas too on how they can use the action plans internally. We've had some people create action plans for a new person coming onto the team, like a new sales rep. They create an action plan of, here are all the things you need to know. Here are the trainings you should take. Here are the setup items you should do to set up HubSpot or your other tools. Some people have used it for marketing, establishing their process for launching a marketing campaign, having that all documented to where they can assign tasks out to certain team members. So just a lot of different ways that that tool can be used within Supered.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think that the main theme across all of them is it cuts down on some of the confusion for internal and external teams, as well as it makes it easier to start. There's so many tools, and especially of onboarding or new processes that are putting in place, it can be really time consuming to explain that to someone else, especially if it's living in one person's brain. This allows it to live elsewhere, which is great. I think all companies on some levels have some people that just like, they know what to do and things get done because it lives in their brain. This kind of takes it out of the brain and puts it onto paper, so that, say that person gets hit by a bus, it lives on. So,
yes, somebody else knows what to do and when.
Right, which is so huge. Awesome. All right. And so from a RevOps perspective, what are the key steps in planning a successful CRM implementation?
Well, sometimes there are a lot of steps, but I think at a kind of a basic level, I would say we need to start with really just alignment on project goals. What are we trying to do with this implementation? How do you expect to use HubSpot? And just making sure that all those expectations are outlined and documented to make sure everybody is on the same page of what we're trying to accomplish. After that, I would say a good discovery call or a good discovery process. Sometimes it takes way more than just one call, but a good discovery is really important too, to make sure you understand what processes are, maybe what things need to change, maybe processes that just don't exist that you're starting from scratch and trying to figure out new. So just a good discovery is really important, I think, early on in the project. After that, I would say documentation. You've worked with me enough, and some clients have probably worked with me enough that know that I do love a good workbook or a piece of documentation that has all the information in one place, so multiple teams can see it. People can use it to guide their decisions or their processes and things like that. So anything I think that you can do to document what you're currently doing is really helpful in any implementation, so that you can decide, is it something we have to replicate? Is it something we need to improve or modify when we move this into like HubSpot CRM, or is it something that just flat out doesn't exist where we need to figure out a process and build one from scratch? After that, kind of move into the implementation phase. Early on in the project, we're really doing the planning, then we're working on implementation. And I think one of the things that we've seen be most successful during implementation is implementing a beta group of users to test things. And especially if you have a really large team of people where you're trying to implement this across large teams or even different countries. We've had clients who take a select group of users, just a couple maybe from each department or from one location, to really beat up what we create as a phase one, make sure that the things that we have in place make sense, work out the kinks so that when they do go to full training the team and implementation for the team, we've kind of worked through all those little things that can cause chaos or some anxiety sometimes from users who are working in a new system.
Yeah, that trial and error is just so important because it's rare that it's going to work exactly right, exactly as the team needs it on the first try, because there's always those nuances and there's always those things that either weren't planned for in that original process. And so having that beta group, I feel like we see it all the time with everything. It's great to have that kind of test subject to be like, all right, now what's wrong with, now break it, essentially.
See what you can do. Then after we have things in a good place with implementation, we typically talk about reporting. Your efforts are great, but if you can't report on them to see if they're doing well or if you need to improve things, I think reporting and establishing those goals is really important, especially in HubSpot, since that's where all of your data is going to be. And then we kind of move on to training. Now that we have things set, we have reports in place, really just establishing that process or change management plan to get people in the system, set those expectations of when they should be using the system and how, and really kind of fully implementing that system for a client. After that, usually that's the onboarding or initial implementation phase, but I think in the grand scheme of things, that's usually just phase one of any project. I think it's pretty important to just keep on with the continuous review and improvement of what you've built. That's just kind of the foundation, like we talked about earlier, setting the foundation of the basics, and then you just continue to, add new tools, maybe use workflows to automate different things, and really just streamline the day-to-day after you've got that foundation set.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those things. It's like home projects. They're never completely done. There's always something else that you can do. There's always another tree that's about to fall down. There's always something that's going to need some attention, or even new features that are rolled out too that can be implemented tied into what you're already doing. I feel like HubSpot is great. It's always growing. It's always adding new things and new betas. And so there's more to test out and more to plan for there too.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. I know we talked a lot about the planning phase too. How does Supered play a role in this planning phase, and what can it do before a team even really logs in almost?
Yeah, I think the Supered platform helps with just outlining the structure of any project, whatever it may be. Particularly with onboarding, I think it just helps give you that high-level overview or roadmap, whatever you want to call it, of how do we get from point A to point B. Mm-hmm. And just kind of, it does a good job of breaking that down into small pieces. With the tasks in the action plans, I think it's really cool. They've been implementing some new features there too, to where you can assign tasks to different people or roles, or even comment right in the comments too, and @mention people. So it can really almost be your PM system, but it's accessible right in HubSpot or whatever tool you're using.
Very cool. And I know you've been a huge part of our efforts here, building out the actual action plans, discoveries, things like that. Can you talk a little bit about that and walk us through how your work on that and what we've been aiming to do there?
Yeah, it's been a big project, no doubt.
I've seen the spreadsheet, so I can confirm that it is large.
So what we've been trying to do is really break down onboarding into smaller tasks and smaller phases. So let's say we're talking about general HubSpot setup. We have a section in our action plan that outlines those tasks or things that we should be doing. But outside of that, it's not just a task to do this. There is what they call a card. So a card pops up when you click into a task, and it shows you more information about that of what does this even mean? Sometimes you can read a task and be like, okay, yeah, I should do that, but I really don't even know what this is saying. So we try to give more context to what is this task at hand, and then why is it important? HubSpot has an immense knowledge base, which is really helpful when you're looking to find those how-to instructions. But even for myself, sometimes I find myself saying, why should I do this? Or how is this important to the bigger picture of how I use HubSpot? So we've also included sections on all of those cards of why is this important to help you utilize HubSpot to the best of your abilities. And then outside of that, the actual how to do things, we've been leaning heavily on the HubSpot knowledge bases because they know it best. They have all the step-by-step instructions. But what we're trying to do is really just bring in all of those resources and the insight that we have from using HubSpot for years and years into one place so that our clients can utilize that information without having to dig for it.
Right. I think it cuts down, at least from what I've seen so far, is cutting down on, for one, clients coming to us and being like, how do I do this, when it's a really simple fix. And I have sent countless videos, messages to my clients of just one-off things that I'm like, hey, this is how you add a user to the social media side of things. Or this is how you add an exclusion list to an email. So even like simple things that I know where they are because I'm in there every day for multiple clients and I'm there. So this, I feel like, helps to impart the knowledge that we have that we otherwise would be sharing in like a quick one-off video directly into the portal so that they don't have to ask. It's just there, which I think is really, really cool. And then also with the HubSpot knowledge base articles, I know a lot of my clients utilize those and we'll try to search there before asking us. And it's just really cool that those can just like pop up there and you don't have to search, because sometimes there's such a wealth of information and so many HubSpot knowledge base articles that it's like, I've read through one before and got to the end and been like, cool, great information. I don't think I was on the right one of these because my question is unanswered. And so then you have to go back to the drawing board search. I also find that sometimes I end up like on the site in like a different language. It must be the way that I'm like typing in the search queries. Yes. I don't know. And then I'm like, wait, all these answers are in Japanese.
HubSpot thinks I'm German because mine always show up in German for some reason.
It's just so funny. So it's nice that they can be linked right there. Less searching, just take some of the friction out of it, because a lot of times what I see is clients using a tool, they're in it, they get stuck, they need to ask a question or find that HubSpot article, and everyone's so busy that by the time they either get the answer or I respond to them, they're out of the tool, they're on to their next thing. And it was a quick answer. Like it could have just been handled way easier with having that information in there, and being able to build that out is just so exciting. And your work there has been so impactful already on the internal side. So really excited to see how it plays out. And as we start to add it to more client portals, I just think that this is going to be a really, really great tool. And as I said before, HubSpot's such a huge investment. This helps everyone get more out of it, which is just what we want. I always say to my clients, like, if there's a tool they're not using, I'm like, you're paying for it. So I want to make sure that you're using it to the best of its ability. If there's friction points, I want to solve those. I want to make sure that your team knows how to solve them and is equipped with the knowledge too. So yeah, super excited about the work that you've been doing there.
Awesome. I appreciate that.
Yeah, of course. Have you noticed any like aha moments where it really made it clear a client finally got the value of the HubSpot platform or of the Super platform? I know that it's still new and we're rolling it out, but any stories there where it was like, oh my gosh, this is awesome?
Yeah, I have a couple that come to mind. I recently demoed Supered for a couple of clients. And every time that I get to the process rules tool within Supered, it's kind of like a jaw-dropping moment. And they're like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. For a little bit of context, the process rules in HubSpot. So it can be similar to like a deal tag or a ticket tag if you're familiar with the deal pipelines and seeing the little red or green, whatever color you choose, the little tags. But it goes a lot further than just seeing it on the board view. So what it is essentially is a rule or criteria that you set in the back end of Supered. And based on that criteria, if that process is met, you can show like a text box warning or a message, or you can even show positive messages too. So it doesn't always have to be like, you're doing this wrong, you need to do this. It can be positive things too if information is filled out correctly on the form or the record. So for example, let's say in your deal pipeline, when you're working the deals, you want to make sure that you always have at least one contact associated to the record and one company associated to the record. The rule on the back end would say, look at all deals in the system. If contact or company are missing, let's show a message on the record, and it shows right in the middle of the center section, like your record timeline. And then it can show whatever message you want to display. So, hey, take a look at the deal record and make sure you associate a contacting company or whatever messaging that you might want to share. So just a really cool way to help enforce those rules, enforce good data entry so that you have good reporting, just kind of bring it all together so that people are using the system the way that you want them to use it.
It's so huge. The first time I heard about it, I think my jaw dropped too. It's so exciting because so often we have clients that either have been in HubSpot for forever. There's been multiple people coming in and out. Really hard to keep that data consistency that you need for good reporting and things like that. And I know so many of my clients are doing major HubSpot cleanups, and having this type of trigger or process in place would help cut down on that so much, because the reminders are there automatically almost, so that there's still room for human error. Let's not discount humans there, but
that'll always be there, but
there's less room for human error, I would say, when you have that. And I think it ties in across the board too, especially on the deal side, giving you clean data for sales reporting, for marketing reporting, for all of the what is moving the needle. Having really clean data in there is just so important. If everyone could have clean deal data in HubSpot, I would be just so happy. I'm being able to just pull from that and come up with strategies based on those reports and be able to know what truly is moving the needle and where we can focus more in the future. So yeah, I have high hopes for where things like this could take us in the future. So it's super exciting.
It's been really cool to see what clients come up with too for those use cases. We've seen some that have, instead of just a process rule to fill in a property or make an association, go beyond that to where maybe a deal has a certain value, really kind of guiding them to the next steps of now that you have this filled in, this is your next step. And it kind of outlines what you should be doing next to either get them on to the next phase or, kind of what are those next steps to keep things moving and continue showing them the process or showing them the way that you expect them to use HubSpot. So it's been really cool to see what clients come up with too.
Yeah, that's awesome. That I feel like because every HubSpot portal and every use case is different, the possibilities are almost endless, because it can be custom tailored to specifics on the client side. So that is awesome. And one thing that just keeps popping to my mind as we keep talking, I know there's some people listening to this and they're like, well, that sounds great, but I'm trying to pare down my tech stack. Like I have subscriptions and I have resources and things that do the same thing. What would you say to someone who has that kind of mindset? Why would Supered be one of the things that they should actually consider adding at a time where so many people are trying to cut down?
That is a very valid point and concern. I think we probably even had the same question on our side. But I think at the end of the day, Supered is so powerful because it enables and it can help your team use the tech stack that you do have better, faster, and more efficiently across the board. Since it can be used on various platforms, it's not solely related to just HubSpot. I think that brings a lot of value to where you could truly have all of your documentation and your guidance in Supered in one place, rather than having it spread out in Google Drives and Docs and other platforms, maybe for documentation to just a good way to consolidate all of your documentation and have it accessible to your team.
Right. If there's a Google Doc that's buried in someone's personal folder that tells someone exactly what to do, it's not as helpful as something directly in the platform. And so, no, I totally agree that this can help cut down in a way that is productive. So yes, you might be adding one thing, but if it's making all your other investments more impactful, then
right,
it's almost a no-brainer. So awesome. Thank you. I just knew as we were talking through, I was like, I know I've had conversations where they're like, we're trying to pare down, we're trying to get a tool that can do everything. And ultimately at the end of the day, there's few tools that can do everything. So it's really finding the ones that move the needle the most from an ROI standpoint on the investments that you already do have.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. All right. So say I'm listening to this and I am someone who is planning on doing a huge HubSpot implementation within the next 3 to 6 months. What should I start doing today so that when our team tries to do it, it's smoother, it's easier, and it's not as intimidating?
There's so much. There's always so much. But if I were to say one thing to start doing now or planning now that would help in the future, would be to start documenting your processes. It doesn't have to be elaborate. It doesn't have to be pretty. Just write something down to start with. What do you do to generate leads? What are your sales cycles or your buyer's journey? How do people move through the funnel? What is your sales process? What is your sales to service handoff or marketing to sales, depending on your scenario or your business model? What does managing your client service pipeline or ticketing system look like? It sounds like a lot, but if you take the time, I think early on to identify what your processes are, that is so helpful for not only the client to have that, but whoever you're working with to implement your system, whether it's a partner agency or consultant or whoever, having that documented is so helpful for them to be able to come into the doc, understand what's happening, and really be able to get you implemented and in the system a lot faster, knowing that those processes and those things are in one place that can be reviewed, rather than spending a couple of weeks figuring out what the heck does everybody do actually to finish this process from start to finish.
Right. I agree completely. And I think that's something that we've even seen here as we continue to grow and onboard new employees internally. There's so much that is passed on verbally or just kept, as I said before, kept in someone's head. Having documentation is so important. And I think one of the values that I've seen recently is having a fresh set of eyes come in and kind of poke holes, and there isn't a process for this yet. So I think for teams looking for a place to start, and maybe they do have some things documented, you likely don't have everything documented.
Right.
Like, that's one thing about documentation. It's never done. There's always more. It's, again, same as house projects. There's always more that can be documented. So I'd say to bringing in someone, and maybe you're a sales team and you think you have everything documented, have someone on the marketing team try to do it and poke holes in where they get stuck and where they don't know, because that is likely a place that needs a little bit of documentation. So I think that that's one way that if you think you have it, you probably don't have all of it.
Probably don't have it all. Yeah. There's always more. Kind of like laundry.
Yes.
You have it done today, but there's always more.
Exactly. Awesome. All right. Well, as we move through this, are there any low-hanging fruit ways that a team could begin making their CRM more user-friendly, whether that's using Supered or not? Any tips for people who are already in there, they've maybe passed that first stage, or maybe they are just feeling a little lost? How can they continue to make their platform as user-friendly as possible so that they can get the most out of their investment?
Yeah, one thing that comes to mind, and sometimes it's overlooked, I think, during initial phases and onboarding, but customizing your records in HubSpot, I think, can have a big impact for a lot of different teams. So I guess when I say record customizations, I'm thinking, let's say that we're looking at a contact record or a deal record. What information do you actually see in your left sidebar? What information do you see in the center section cards that are on the timeline? What associations do you see on the right side of your records? It seems really simple, like it wouldn't be a big deal. But especially when you have a lot of different teams or a lot of types of different data in the system, like using logic on the left sidebar to show certain properties based on the type of record it is, or showing some information from your associated records in the center section of like a deal record, can just make a huge impact for those teams that are in the CRM day to day. It's less clicks, which over the course of the day just saves a huge amount of time.
I was going to say huge quality of life upgrade.
Yeah.
Your sales team will thank you if they're the ones that are primarily using that tool. Whoever's primarily using it will thank you, just because, again, there's nothing more frustrating than being like, all right, I know what I'm looking for, but now I have to click. There's something within Hubs, like, and again, every portal is different, but I have one client who has a custom view and it definitely works for their team, and I'm happy that they have it. But it's almost every time I go in there, I'm like, all right, where do I click to find X, Y, or Z? Because it's something that I'm looking at that their team isn't. But if I was a member of their team, I would be like, and I was looking for that specific thing, I would be like, can we change this? Like, is there a way that I don't have to try to remember every single time I go in there? So I think you're spot on with that, is working with your team, and it might look different for different members of your team, and trying to find the best way to kind of balance those out.
Yeah. And I mean, you can make record views available by team. So
right.
That if marketing wants to see these data points and they don't care about some of the other ones, let's make one for marketing. Let's make one for sales, to just make sure that the important information for that particular user or team is easily accessible, more likely than for the teams to use it.
Right. And it just leads to the overall less frustration if every piece of information that I want to see is just there. Like, wow, imagine a world.
Yes, a perfect world.
A world about digging. So yeah, definitely a huge time saver and such a good recommendation. Again, with recommendations, just kind of a rapid fire. What is your favorite capability within Supered?
Ooh.
It might be hard to pick because I know there's a lot, but
let's see. I think right now it might be a toss-up between two. I really like the process roles that we talked about earlier. Just an awesome way to enable your team to fill in the right information, take the right next step, and really just guide them through the processes that you set or the expectations that you set. On the other hand, the project manager in me really likes the action plans. Obviously, we've been using it for onboarding and different things internally, but there are so many neat ideas and use cases I think that clients could come up with once they understand how to use the action plans and standardize their processes, to where I think that can be a really powerful tool too.
Yeah, I think that one for me, just from learning about it and starting to see the initial stages of it, that one for me, I get really excited about it too, because I just think there's so much that can be done with it, as you said. So yeah, I think I agree. That's a really exciting one too. Awesome. Well, this was so much fun. Thank you so much for sharing all of your expertise here. It's still such a new tool, so I'm sure that people listening might have questions about Supered or even just HubSpot implementation in general. If you do, please reach out to us. You can contact us by going to protocol80.com or emailing us at info@protocol80.com as well. And we'll be happy to talk to you. Probably not me, because I'm not the expert there, but Vicki or Josh or someone way smarter can answer your questions about that. And yeah, just finally, Vicki, thank you so much for your time today. This is so fun.
Absolutely. This is fun. Thanks for having me.
Of course.